Blah, 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 blah. Got to get over the hump. Welcome to this lesson on a Western interpretation of the transverse regulatory catabolic modalities of the global balance method. The first slide answers the question, why is this category of modality labeled the transverse regulatory catabolic? Next, the principle of using basic nominal sums to label each individual modality within the category is covered in brief, along with a diagram of each mode and its color coding. Finally, all 6 modalities within the category are presented through all 3 nominal sums and both chiral expressions, along with a brief series of notes on the iterative nature of the pedagogy in the context of the chiral expressions. Slide 1, Nomenclature. Why transverse regulatory catabolic? In keeping with the spirit of simplicity, there are 2 basic points to remember. First, transverse regulatory catabolic modalities treat illnesses across the transverse plane, such that hand treats foot and foot treats hand. Second, modalities in this category are of 2 general types, warming and drying or cooling and drying. As a result, they are expected to be useful in reducing moisture and correcting hot and cold conditions. Thus, the transverse regulatory modalities treat abnormal temperature variations across the transverse plane by either stimulating the hand's warming and drying meridians for the purpose of warming a patient suffering from a chill, or stimulating the foot's cooling and drying meridians in order to cool down hot conditions of fever. For the purpose of reinforcing the academic values provided, a reading of the description behind the motives for the nomenclature will be provided here. The caption for the diagram found on the lower left-hand side reads as follows. In the transverse regulatory catabolic context, a treatment is applied to meridians on one side of the transverse axis or another. The meridians used for treatment in the catabolic context are either warming and drying or cooling and drying, depending upon the side of the axis being treated. Catabolic hand vessels are warming and drying, while catabolic foot vessels are cooling and drying. The bullet points on the right provide the same information previously given from a slightly altered but entirely equivalent perspective. They are as follows. All axial modalities treat conditions with the side of the axis opposite to the site of the indication or injury. Transverse catabolic modes of any type do this across the transverse plane, using the hand vessels to treat the foot vessels and the foot vessels to treat the hand vessels. In the transverse regulatory catabolic context, the periods of the vessel's peak circadian expression occur across an interval of no more than 4 to 5 hours. Catabolic modes of every type are always composed of both warming, drying vessels and cooling, drying vessels. Basic treatments are then achieved by selecting a pair of warming and drying vessels on the hands or a pair of cooling and drying vessels on the feet. In general, the modality is named for its composition from the catabolic vessels of the transverse regulatory modalities. Slide 2, Basic Nominal Sums. Transverse regulatory catabolic 20, 28, and 36. The 3 modalities shown here are some of the more common patterns used in treating clinical complaints. Setting the semantics of their physiological expression aside, this material will provide a valid nomenclature useful for categorizing the modes themselves and their orientation within the scope of the global balance method. Proceeding from left to right, the transverse regulatory catabolic modalities are composed as follows. Transverse regulatory catabolic 20 consists of the small intestine and spleen vessels, labeled for their nominal equation 6 plus 4 plus 6 plus 4 equals 20. Transverse regulatory catabolic 28 consists of the colon and liver vessels, labeled for their nominal equation 2 plus 12 plus 2 plus 12 equals 28. Transverse regulatory catabolic 36 consists of the triple burner and kidney vessels, labeled for their nominal equation 10 plus 8 plus 10 plus 8 equals 36.